I just got scammed out of $742 yesterday by some pretty sophisticated scammers. They kind of blew my mind with how smart they were, the process that they went through that just kind of took me by surprise and ended up losing $742. I want you to share this video with as many people as you possibly can so we can get this message out. It's a scam I'd never heard of before. It's specific to the trucking industry. And I want as many people as possible to know about it so they don't have to go through the same kind of crap that I just did. So here's essentially what happened. Nate gives me a call yesterday late in the morning, says, hey, I've got a police officer on the line. One of our drivers was involved with something I don't know yet. I'm going to conference this in so he can tell us both at the same time. So we get on the phone, conference in with the police officer. This isn't the first time this has happened in our trucking company. Like, we've had situations like this in the past, whether it's an accident or something else going on where an officer calls us and says, hey, I need to talk to you about this situation. So the officer gets on the line and he says, hey, one of your drivers today was involved in an incident at a truck stop. He was, there was something went on in the truck stop. Somebody cut somebody else off, and the driver of the other truck was a Schneider driver. He gets out of his truck in a road rage type thing, starts banging on your driver's door. Your driver comes out, and it ends up resulting in a physical altercation. The officer says, I was close by, came on the scene as the altercation was still going on. And he's like, I went up behind your driver. He'd been spit on by the other guy. I grabbed the back of his shoulder when I was behind him. Your driver turned around and pushed me. I could get him for an assault. The police officer went on. I had, basically, I'm summarizing a little bit. The police officer kind of went on and said, I could have got him for a felony assault, but I talked through with him, and he didn't know I was an officer when he pushed me, and yada yada yada. And so anyway, he kind of goes on explaining in a little bit more detail this altercation between our driver and a Schneider driver. And he said everybody, the witnesses that were all there, corroborated that the other driver was at fault. Your driver was just kind of defending himself. So because of the significance of it, because he pushed me, we've got to take your driver in, and we're just going to do a book and release. And he's like, there's nothing an issue with that. But the problem is that the travel plaza where this happened at, they have a zero tolerance policy for this kind of thing. So both trucks are getting towed. And, we listen to that, and he's like, your truck's already being towed right now. Your driver is with one of my colleagues and is being taken to the detention center where he's going to be processed. And I've got one of the managers for the tow company right here with me. He's going to need to get payment, yada, yada, yada. And I can't remember exactly how that happened, but at one point we're on the phone with a truck driver, with a towing company. And, he's like, our driver is taking your truck to our yard just down the road. I actually, at this point, look at the ELD, and sure enough, it's moving down the road, where he says. And we need to get payment of it before we can release it. We can release it in our tow yard after you make payment. But the officer's all like, at that point, he kind of just comes in and says, it would be easier. I could take your driver from the processing facility. There's a travel plaza close by. If they can actually take the truck there instead of their facility, then I can just take your driver there. You're not going to have to worry about transportation because it's close enough. And the tow truck guy is all like, well, we can't do that unless you make the payment now. So anyway, they at that point kind of put a little bit of time pressure on us to make a payment immediately. Unfortunately, we're still in the point where everything he's saying seems very plausible and reasonable, like something that could possibly happen. Obviously unordinary, not a normal thing, but we've had to do this before, where we've had to make quick payments to tow companies because one of our truck is getting towed, whether it's for repair, they're parked in an illegal spot, or something happens. So not crazy out of the ordinary. So we unfortunately end up making this money code payment and so that money, as soon as you make it, is essentially gone. And the story kind of continues. And then at the next point, once that first payment's made, he's all like, oh, I forgot to mention that they had to replace one of the steer tires on your truck because the other driver punctured it. Now, don't worry, all of this is going to be reimbursed by Schneider. We've already been talking with their safety people too, and they gave us a reference code for the situation and a contact at Schneider with an email address that we could send our information to, or we could contact, and they would reimburse us because their driver was essentially at fault for the whole situation. And there were a few more things that, like, okay, well, we want to talk to this lady, give us a few minutes to make the phone call. And he said that the driver punctured the steer tire with a knife, and they just replaced the steer tire without first asking us. And he's all like, your other steer tire was pretty bad, and when you replace one, you got to replace the other, so the total bill is $900. And this is when, like, it really starts dawning on me that something is going on here. It just doesn't quite pass the sniff test. And so I actually go on, I mute my phone, I go into my computer and look at the ELD, and I see, this is where I should have seen this earlier, and I kind of kicking myself in the butt for this. But I go on and I look, and he's been driving for 3 hours straight, still driving. And so, like, at that point, I'm like, what? Nobody's been driving to a yard or to a truck stop from another incident. Like, this truck has been in motion for almost 3 hours. And so I get on my office phone that our driver doesn't know. I'm like, I hope he picks up. Please pick up. Please pick up. So I call him from my office line. He picks up. I'm like, hey, Larry, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just driving down the road. And I'm like, how you didn't get in a fight this morning or anything, did you? He's like, no. So Larry is like dumbfounded at this whole, he's like, what, why are you calling me? Why are you asking me these questions? And I'm like, see you later. I'll be right back. And so I kind of hung up with him, and I texted Nate. I'm like, we're being scammed, hang up. And so, that's essentially what happened. These guys were sophisticated. They talked about DOT regulations. They talked about a whole bunch of things that made them sound legitimate. And really kind of pulled the wool over our eyes. Again, I'm kicking myself in the butt. There were some red flags, but they weren't very blatant red flags. And so, again, it was something that was very well within the realm of possibility, out of the ordinary, but still possible. And, we essentially just got scammed. I didn't see it coming. It's not a scam I've ever heard of before, and so I don't know if this is new, but I want you to be aware of it so that you guys don't get taken by the same thing. As this kind of whole thing happened, there's really, I feel like, 3 lessons that I learned going through this situation. First, never rush into making a payment. When somebody comes on like this, if it's a tow company or anything like that, take your time, do your due diligence, and think through the whole situation before you make that payment. If you do everything you can to verify it's legit, and, ideally talk to your driver before you do it. Second, keep your emotions out of it. You kind of get in this really high tense situation where you're feeling pressure to have something happen. Your driver's in a situation that's uncomfortable for the driver, it's uncomfortable for you, and you kind of, to a certain extent, your emotions get heightened. You want to get through it, you want to get it behind you, but just don't let that do that. Just kind of, you got to operate on an even keel. Don't let the emotions get the best of you. And then, finally, the third lesson is be skeptical with everything. When you run into a situation like this, we're dealing with somebody we've never dealt with before, be skeptical. We're dealing with a very unusual, but not out of the ordinary type of situation, be skeptical. And before you make any kind of payments, just make sure you do your due diligence and think it through and try to find some ways to verify that some of this information you're being told, verify it with another independent something. Like, we never called the Schneider person, but I would never just use the phone number that they gave me to call Schneider. I would call Schneider's direct line and try to find, they gave us a name, and try to get in contact with the person. Find Schneider's phone number through the internet. Don't trust the people that you're talking to. And obviously Schneider had nothing to do with this. This isn't their fault. They were just using Schneider just like they were using our trucking company to scam us out of money. Again, it's sophisticated. It happened in the South. Our driver was in the South, and I'm sure the people that did this scam just saw our driver, saw the truck number, got our DOT number, and then went in and looked up our public DOT information online, got our phone number, and just called that. And that's kind of what got this whole ball rolling. Again, share this with everybody that you can. I want this thing to go as viral as possible so as many people as possible can hear about it and know about the scam, be aware of it, and not let this kind of thing or any other thing take advantage of them and their hard work, just like I got taken advantage of. If at Holland Assets, at the Holland Assets podcast, we spend a bunch of our time doing this kind of stuff, making sure that owner-operators and fleet owners know what's out there, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We cover the operations of our trucking company so you can see that. And we want you to be able to learn from some of our mistakes so that you don't make the same mistakes we do. We want you to learn from the things that we do well as well so you can do those in your trucking company. So follow the Holland Assets podcast and learn as much as you can from the dumb things that we do.